This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Click in the description to get your 2 months free right now.
What is the Animatrix?
An anthology film put together by the Wachowskis, harking back to the collaborative anime movies of the late 80s, taking many of their favourite anime directors and letting them loose in the Matrix universe. Watanabe, as usual, was on the ground floor, a big fan of filmmakers since their first project, Bound. When approached by the production, he was more than happy to contribute. Despite his gratitude, Watanabe states it was a difficult production, dealing with producers in Hollywood, referring to it as a battle. Even if the short's lengths were no longer than the average episode of anime, it was such an intensive process. Kid's Story doubled the frame count to begin with its loose, sketchy style. They needed one for the line work and the other to colour it in, as the lines didn't always connect, so you couldn't always autofill stuff. This is a bold departure from what's possible by the animation director Shinji Hashimoto. We met Shinichiro back in the early days of Sunrise, and Watanabe kept up with him, and eventually, boom, he's on this project. Hey ho. His animation was described by one of the cast members as a rubbery reality, which is the best description I've seen of it. It visually transforms from the life drawing to like a twisted house of mirrors at the moment's notice. The crew were lucky enough to get the actor for the kid to do the scenes for the short, to give the key animators a direct reference. Watanabe was able to take the outline of the script and add a little bit more, bring a full arc into the story, bring the kind of flavour you'd expect from him. So overall, this section, tons of energy, raw attitude, short but sweet. Detective Story paints a unique vision of noir with a sort of retro future edge. It was Watanabe's idea, like a hard-boiled story meets The Matrix. Kana was absent from both productions as she went on to do her own thing. Instead, Detective Story goes for a traditional jazz soundtrack, as you would actually play in the 40s, dedicating itself to that tone. It also finds ways around issues with noir animation. I've always found that they have a hard time capturing the textural element of a film stock or being as dark as they could be. So this time they're using some textural filters and noise with the animation, adding a bit of distortion to fit that Matrix style with occasional flourishes of tiny pieces of colour to make the world pop. This all makes some of the rougher 3D models blend better on the world, and even the signs have a sketchy aesthetic. Kazuto Nakasawa did the animation directing here. He's most well known for his animation sequence in Kill Bill. He's another ex-Sunrise employee. You see, those people skills really get you places. Yeah, the shorts are a bit more grounded in a reality, less rubber, more rotoscoped, calling back to a different age. While Watanabe dabbled in noir beforehand, this is his first project that deep dives into the genre, down to the circular story and the dour ending. It's able to tell a story that's pretty complete in a small space of time, without feeling hampered. Some of these shorts, they can feel a bit like a condensed action scene, but this one's got its grit, and it's one of his finest shorts, even if there was too many difficulties to name. Animatrix would go on to sell a lot of DVDs, being released a month after Reloaded, which is the height of the Matrix's period of popularity. So it made over $68 million in the home market, which was a new bar for mature anime at the time. After all that mayhem and the prior productions, you'll be happy to know this next project is the first time Shinichiro has a smooth sail, at least creatively. So this was the project where Watanabe was given free rein to do as he pleased. It's the closest we've even gotten to another Bebop, in structure that is. A small group dynamic with 3 young fools, getting into misadventures while half-starving, playing with convention and genre. The other side of the coin, if Bebop is an old soul in the future, Champloo is the Edo period with a hip-hop heart. And that's the new saying, Edo, Japan, known for its isolationism, homosexuality, and flowering popular culture. But not really samurai. Samurai were the top of the class system for sure, but these were times of peace where samurais lived in castle towns. They would take on different career positions because they weren't as needed. Ronin, on the other hand, that's a different story. Champloo knows a thing or two about roaming samurai. Mugen, a ragged, badmouth punk who fights for the challenge to prove he's the best. Dressed like a b-boy out of time using capoeira, some sort of breakdancing fight style, his blade in hand. Mugen is the prime example of the concept of champuru, or champloo, a food term from Okinawa meaning a mix or stirred together, a slice and dice of different cultures to make a new dish, a metaphor for how Watanabe takes influences, ideas, and blends them into something new. Even seen in characters like Mugen's foil, Jin, a regal, quiet, composed samurai, the classic Bushido. He's from the upper class, wearing a stylish pair of glasses, the kind you wouldn't find 400 years ago. Doesn't seem to slow down his sword skills, though. Reflective of his personality, ordered, precise, and reserved, only used to protect his interests and himself. Both swordsmen's philosophy split on a fork path. Only thing they can agree on being they want to kill the other, but there's someone stopping them. Fu, the glue that holds them together. Young, naive, ever-trusting girl that has a hobby for being captured. They're on a journey that goes from a samurai drama to baseball ballistics within a heartbeat. It's anachronism at its finest, with Champloo piecing together genres in a collaged fashion, not dissimilar to a DJ or hip-hop producer sampling from old records. This similarity brought on a change in sound. There's no Yoko Kanno this time. Watanabe wanted hip-hop from the source, no pastiche here. It's the real deal with Nujabes and company. While Nujabes was a breakout star in the OST, it would be disingenuous to downplay how important each musician was for defining the show. Fat John, the American hip-hop artist, Force of Nature, the legendary Japanese duo, Tasachi, an old friend of Watanabe's, and a Japanese producer in his own right. He's the first person Watanabe approached for the project and had the most involvement on the week-to-week. As a soundtrack, its tone is laid back, cool, full of breakbeats. Fat John takes that kind of tone with flashes of sadness. Although this brings attention to the flip. Say for example in episode 14, Force of Nature's track becomes a tribalistic beat. As the tension heightens, so does the instrumentation. A groovy, heavy bass appears next to the shriek of a synth, building to a horrific climax, a real bite to its bluntness. The soundtrack also features ancestral music. Once again, in episode 14, they play a piece of Okinawan music uninterrupted for the first half. And as the director has stated, I made Samurai Champloo the series in order to make that scene. The OST is a uniform package focusing on hip-hop and its intersection between Japanese traditionalism. That hip-hop is in its veins, but what's rare is its ability to depict all four pillars throughout the series. There's a respect and an understanding shown despite how it breaks from the expected setting. Sometimes the more different things are, the more similarities they share. This was the first TV anime to dedicate itself to the ways of the MC, something I doubt they'd be able to do without Watanabe at the helm, developing the show with a new group of animators at Manglobe, which is a Sunrise subsidiary, for making new original anime. But now in widescreen with digital production, moving away from that animation cell, increasing the digital painting and effects. Since a certain point in the 2000s, all productions have been digital. The director states that this made it easier. Even as early as Bebop, there were digital processors added to the anime, and they'd be transferred to an analog film, but this would cause all manner of issues with color matching and other technical problems. Same with material, there's only so much paint and celluloid to go around. Despite the convenience of digital art, the first episode took 3 months to produce on top of a 1-year pre-production. The initial series plan was kind of thrown out, with plenty of rewrites in hand. Everyone thought I wasn't doing my job, or goofing off, but I was really thinking. Guy Sato, a screenwriter on Champloo, mentioned Watanabe will go with his gut during the production, feeling his way through. He's that kind of guy that will throw everything out if it's not going to plan. Sato is one of the few returning players from Bebop. This time Watanabe opts to work with a traditional TV writing setup, with Dai writing some of the most comedic episodes of the show. Shinichiro found Dai thrived in that comedic area on Bebop, and has continued to hire him in that position since. Dai has stated himself that the director was one of the creators that nurtured him to become the writer he is today, which speaks to his change in position. He's no longer the rookie director. Shinichiro spends the coming years fostering talent of young and impressive individuals, like Sayo Yamamoto and Misaki Yuasa. Both collaborated on the show, working with him in the future, both made a name for themselves, and each have a feature film coming out this year. Even in its fantastic opening, there's a little unknown talent behind it by the name of Mamoru Hosoda, only one of the most financially successful anime directors of the last 10 years. He directed the OP. It's one of the few openings that can compete with Bebop's style and execution. It contrasts stillness against dense animation quick cuts. Takeshi Koike was the key animator here, and he brings streams of flowing animation bursting with tons of pop color against the muted, traditional Japanese aesthetic. Each barrage establishing the personality and style of the main characters. The timing of its compositions and the layering of its movement together become mythic. Also, I'm a big fan of how the English credits just snap under the Japanese. That's good. And of course, the music is wonderful, a perfect match to the tone and themes of the project, but I'm sure there's another video out there that goes into that in greater detail. Watanabe once again takes on the episodic format, his favourite style, an overarching story with an accessible package, saying he likes the structure because people can pick up it at any time. Serials discourage him. He finds it daunting to try and take something on 6 seasons in, but Champloo was still more structured than Bebop, with 5 multi-parters in comparison. Both are 26 episodes, but does lightning strike twice here? Does Champloo have the same kind of meat that you can chew on and discuss? To the latter, I say, yeah. Champloo touches on many social commentaries about Japan and has much more to say about its native land than Bebop. The hard truths of Edo, even showing ways which Japan was more tolerant on certain issues in the past to drive its point that sometimes you can't save everybody. Life isn't fair, which makes the times you can change things mean more, even when it's bittersweet. For example, episode 11, we see both a budding love story that mounts the icy exterior of Jin, leading him to put his life on the line for her. Shino, she inherited her husband's debt, forced to be a prostitute. It's a horrifying situation with the lack of rights you can have as a person to be treated as property, made worse by her own husband's continuing dedication to racking up debt with rampant disregard. The bleakness of the story is counterbalanced by Mugen training a Hercules beetle to wrestle with such an intensity you'd expect to see it on WWE. That's one of the show's strengths, bringing the outrageousness of the adventures of the Champloo crew against the brutal reality of the period. The ending sequence of the episode plays Counting Stars by Nujabes. It recontextualized how I viewed that song. I didn't get why it was so popular until I saw it synced up with the scene, where Jin helps Shino escape. Deeper than words, as Tasachi might say. Setting a tone without needing to say much. It's perfect in that moment. As in the episode, Yamamoto directed and storyboarded it, and her intimate style made it a standout, putting forward the mundanity of the prostitute's life with this sensual, dead-eyed snapshot. Samurai Champloo takes a critical lens to the term samurai. Watanabe stated he didn't want the project to be considered nationalist. Samurai are icons of the feudal era, but the show puts them in a bad light, representing the ruthlessness of the system, that they can cut you down, as long as you're a certain class. The main character sees the brunt of this, Mugen especially. He's the lowest on the class system, both a vagrant and non-Japanese. He derives from the most southern point from Japan, the Ryukyu Kingdom, a group of independent islands, or they were until the Japanese Empire invaded. Ryukyu Kingdom was a vassal state for Japan, although after a political dispute with the feudal lord Satsuma, he invaded and captured the land, the king included. That kingdom had a fantastic route for foreign trade, especially sugarcane, which Satsuma expanded upon, creating a period known as Sato Jigoku, or Sugar Hell. Mugen's homeland crumbles. He becomes a pirate common in the territory, is captured by the Japanese and fakes his own death to escape. His disdain for the establishment is seared into him by his past, but also comes back to haunt him. This is mirrored by Ukuru, who's from the north, an indigenous Ainu. Their situation isn't far off Mugen's, if not worse. In fact, his inclusion in the series is already a contentious point, as Japan, even in the modern day, sees that as a controversy to broadcast anything about the Ainu on TV. The issue goes back a long way. Watanabe got around this by never stating their name on screen, but giving a lot of clues from a location and historical position. Yes, sometimes Champloo is real, if a little embellished. There was a respectable amount of research done, after all. To paraphrase the team, if you're making something fake, you gotta know what's real. The decisions both Mugen and Ukuru make are out of desperation, putting their life into threatening situations. How they face it reflects their own mentality. Okuru goes down like a martyr, his attitude dulled after losing his loved ones. But Mugen has a different approach. He sees faults and issues as something he can overcome and solve. Even if Mugen has lost everything he's grew up with, his family included, he keeps pushing forward, going as far to study if he has to, which keeps him on the top by the skin of his teeth. Just like the TV production. Yep. Alright, so while Watanabe was given free reign, Fuji TV cut the original program slot after 17 episodes, moving it to their sister channel instead. Problem being, that stopped production in its tracks. They had to just shut up shop. And even worse, the sister channel rebroadcast the whole thing, putting even more time in between the show beginning again. Of course, this wasn't the only hiccup in the production. With the recap episode 12, Watanabe implied that this is the kind of choice you make to give your schedule more time. But according to the behind the scenes notes, the episode and how it was approached in his way took so much time it didn't help the timekeeping at all. Great ending theme though. Speaking of music, the production ran out of it towards the end, so they were kind of screwed. Their budget was gone, they had no music for the last 3 episodes. Watanabe had to get Tasachi to come in and dub the final episodes, like improving over the animation. Watanabe needed something fresh for that thematic ending. Tasachi ended up making a track a week, and that's all a bit messy. And that's not including the original issue of finding a broadcaster who would show the series that's full of minorities and sword battles on top of hip-hop in the first place. Even the Americans had some problems. After the success of Bebop, Adult Swim was counting on Champloo's success. It had halted the release so it could be a little closer to the DVDs. There was quite a bit of delay and gaps because of its syndication. It came on the air censored. The dubbing process was heavy-handed, let's say. Japanese production members were in the booth, to the dismay of the actors.
Oh, I'm an American. Yankee Doodle. Shut up!
But compared to Bebop, these are small problems. The show went down pretty well, all things considered. Was it as big as Bebop? Well, I don't think you could be. The syndication was all over the place in both territories, and the fan discussion hasn't been as intense. I guess Fu's goals aren't quite as compelling as Spike's, which is no surprise. I could watch Spike do his taxes and I'm sure it'd be a blast. But Champloo is about the journey rather than the destination. The Sunflower Samurai never mattered to us. The stakes of meeting him were lost until about, the 2/3 on us? The tone spirals to a melancholic position by the finale, being bleakest before the dawn. The battle intensifies, death seems inevitable, blades cut deeper, the fight scenes explode with visceral action. How? Whoop! Ooh, ow. Yeah, there we go. Especially that mixture of striking fast moves and the chillest of beats. Nakasawa came in for those final fights in an explosive fashion, bringing a true finale to it all. His philosophy on the fights was that the swords never clash, as that's not how it's done. The only time we see swords slam against each other is right here. Classic. The ending is clear-cut this time, slicing the adventure to a close. It's full of optimism for its younger cast, who are on the early stages of their journey, moving into their next adventure. Whatever could that be? Maybe one day they'll get the band together, but who knows? Sure, it's not as poetic as other endings, and people are still arguing about the finer details of Bebop's finale, but Watanabe wanted to attract a younger audience, with the message more in line with those characters' outlook. If you're going through hell, keep going. Each of them overcomes something at a deep cost, but that gives them a new lease on life. Fu finds closure about why her father truly left. Jin feels less of a lone samurai, with nothing to lose. Maybe Mugen feels less of a need to prove his bravado at every turn. Champloo would like to say there's a light at the end of a tunnel, that you can overcome your problems, something seen in the philosophy of its composer, Nujabes, who is always passionate in his message of positivity, love, and creative expression. And I'm sure his collaborators would agree. I can't think of a better samurai anime, even if I'm Team Bebop overall. But hell, at least Champloo's spin-off game doesn't suck. It had some clout behind it too, Grasshopper Entertainment of No More Heroes fame. Well, I'm sure there's already a whole video on that topic somewhere. Speaking of things you should check out, this video is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning community with thousands of classes covering dozens of creative entrepreneurial skills. Explore classes in everything from filmmaking, creative writing, to animation, and much more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to these high-quality classes from experts in those fields, making you the best creator you can be. Skillshare is also incredibly affordable with an annual subscription of less than $10 a month. Now, recently I've been trying out the DIY cinematography course because I've been shooting a lot with my friend, Scheming Fox, making videos, and I'm planning to do more live action stuff in my own videos. So this was a good course to have a primer on things like using light, planning out sets, for like the best impact and dynamic shots. So click my link in the description to get 2 months of Skillshare Premium for free. I could talk about Champloo all day, there is so much to deconstruct, and I've only scratched the surface, but we have to keep moving. I like music a great deal, so with the animation director role, I generally play the animation music director as well. And there were times when I would be looking at someone else's work and go, oh, this could be much better if you put that there, or you did this, with the music. Studio 4C's cult classic Mind Game. Its musical muse was none other than Watanabe. This is a period where his love for music and curation grew out, spreading into other productions. He used that expertise to help his colleagues. He saw his pal in the office of 4C making this kinetic cartoon and wanted to be part of it, offering his role as the music producer. He'd do the same with the Duchess of Cool, Sayo Yamamoto. They got on well. She co-directed the last episode of Champloo with him. So Shinichiro chose the track order on both of Yamamoto's debut and her Lupin throwback follow-up. Now, The Woman Called Fujiko is an audio-visual masterpiece, but Hatchin's no slouch either. That's a killer soundtrack. You'll notice there was a big break in between those projects. You might think I was kicking back, but I was actually trying to come up with some original projects. Unfortunately, none of them came to fruition. Both the decrease in physical media sales and the Great Recession would have put many projects on the back burner. Watanabe once described the change in the industry. Since the 90s, the focus has been on niche market, but after a sharp decline in software sales, that shelved a lot of ambitious and experimental projects in the 2000s. The producers often ask, and where's that cute girl at? Looking for any security they can find for such an unpredictable market. A question the ballsy and genre-pushing 4C studio were not too fussed about with their second anthology, Genius Party. If you asked me who made this short without looking it up, I would have guessed Makoto Shinkai. But no, Shinichiro returns with the closing film, taking a distinct change in direction, one that he'll keep for the next 3 projects. For an experimental short, what Watanabe delivers is quite grounded. Eiji Abiko is the animation director and character designer, bringing life to this small love story with its rebellious and charming elements. Yoko Kanno returns, if you couldn't tell. It's a school days kind of fantasy. The dialogue is snappy and naturalistic, but it calls back to the what-ifs of youth. What if I ducked out of school one day, asked a girl out, went on a train as far as we could go, but then we fell asleep and I couldn't find our way back home? Alright, that part doesn't sound so fun. Stupid public transport. I'm sure everyone can relate to having plans and then seeing them go botched beyond belief. There's a level of mundanity to it, next to dashes of excitement. Alright, that part's pretty insane. I don't know what they were thinking. I'd find it hard to call any of this experimental. The other films go hard in that regard, and this is a serious change of pace, all things considered. A bit more accessible, something to calm you down, get you a bit more reflective on the experience. A gentle goodbye with that pinch of bittersweetness. Talking about bittersweetness, the live-action Bebop film has been this on-again, off-again novelty for the press since the early 2000s. Will Keanu Reeves be in it? Will it ever happen? Who's going to direct it? What about Shinichiro? What's he going to do about it? This production hell is only now moving anywhere with the Netflix show. So it's weird to see a 5-minute short pop out of nowhere in 2012. Don't get me wrong, it's quite fun. It holds a similar tone to the show, albeit with new characters. It could have been a cool spin-off, or even a pitch for something bigger. The playfulness next to the grotesque, the focus on the musical climax, all set off by the silly visual gag. It has the balance between its wild cowboy shootouts and its tongue-in-cheek humour, which I could imagine being removed from the live-action versions, focusing on Bebop's harder stuff, opposed to the aspects that make them resonate. You can't have Jupiter jazz without your mushroom sambas. Speaking of jazz, do you like it? Because you're going to need to for the next project. Kids on the Slope. It's a period piece set in the 60s about jazz, high schoolers, and a coming-age tale. In his youth, Shinichiro had his own Kids on the Slope style experience. With less jazz and more Kiss, the manga resonated with him enough to make it his first anime adaptation, stating that he didn't want someone else to make the anime version and do it wrong, without the passion for jazz that he himself felt. This is the furthest departure yet. It's not an action show. No killing people. There's a fight or two, but the burden of the show relies on its characters. It's based on a josei manga written by Yuki Kodama, who came to the studio during the production. She recorded the process, and it sounds like it was a lot of fun hanging around everyone, and she even participated to some degree, creating a keyframe here and being insightful on the direction of the show. That baby blue short was no write-off. The director was passionate about mixing things up and choosing another path, probably because after Bebop, the only shows that he was given to direct or pitched to him were action anime, so he took the chance while he still had it. Mappa was the studio working on this, and they're a new studio at this point from the founders of Madhouse. I mean, hopefully they last a little longer than Manglo Boy there, rest in peace. It's a drama with a group of kids going through puberty, so you know how this is going to go. At least these characters attempt to tell each other how they feel, and make a move. We don't see a cycle of will they ever confess. Instead it explores concepts like each character's decisions are all their own damage, insecurities, leaving unintended consequences on those they love. You gotta learn to grow past that, to reconcile through that. I mean, look at all those examples. Oof. That's not going to be a flavour for everyone, from its love triangles, misunderstandings, and extreme outbursts, although it isn't to say the show holds such a firm tone all the time. It gets goofy, the characters have fun together, and you understand why they care so much about each other, most of the time. Thinking about it, Sen does get a kind of a raw deal. It's no wonder he got out of there. Out of all the characters, Sen is the favourite. As the most sympathetic cast member, in terms of his backstory, we learn under his prickly exterior he's a wholesome boy who spends most of the journey growing. His impulsiveness also brings up this unpredictable element to the scenes, making it a joy to watch. Richie tends to, scoff in a monologue, "Oof, I hate hills." But you throw Sen in there, suddenly it's, hey, that's something's going on right now. 3, 2, 1, let's jam. Where the show shines is in its sessions, from the dynamic animation that build to thematic payoffs. Watanabe wanted to have a drummer in-house for the sake of accuracy, and he didn't like that still style of musical anime. He wanted to bring authenticity to those kids' performance, to capture the loose and energetic experience of playing jazz. Even if it was a lot of work, at least it paid off. The best part of Kids on the Slope is his explosive sessions and how they relate to the character relationships. This time, there's a lot of licensed music in this pop world, as if the crew were giving a recommendation list of their favourite jazz singles. Nobutaru Yuki adapted the character designs. He's no stranger to a Watanabe collab. He does a pretty good job of transitioning them to the animated world. And to go with those visuals, we have Yoko Kanno back overseeing the soundtrack, which is this jazzy kinesthetic display of live performances by studio musicians, always bringing the energy. We see the music used as character development. The longer the gang are together, the stronger the intensity of the playing, each playstyle becoming as harmonic as their relationship. When they're frayed emotionally, the playing becomes out of sync. It doesn't work out. Most of the OST revolves around them performing, learning, and mastering those jazz standards with their own expression. Overall, they do justice to them, keeping it simple, rarely more than piano and drums. The rest of the soundtrack, you'll get some lighter background music that sets the tone, a couple tracks that remind me of some chill hop you'd hear in Champloo. Finally, the orchestral stuff, that classic Kano angel choir for the emotional highs. Which brings me to the ending and how it was changed from the source material. The anime hard cuts and the characters don't get their payoffs, especially the ones we'd like as an audience. It's a bit like climbing up the stairs in the dark and looking for that last step that isn't there. That's the difficult thing with the core system. Kids on the Slope doesn't need another 12 episodes, just enough to expand on the time it's lost, the things that are trimmed out, or those extra sessions. We might be able to see something like how Sen found his way to the church, or a little more context in those after years. We don't even get that full circle moment with the hill, nor Richie's decision to stay behind on the island, nor the final ending of the manga, which is so good. It's a nice payoff for all the doom and gloom. There's a moment in the extra sessions which summarize the direction of the series, which isn't the romance drama, but dealing with the bad and the good that comes with growing up in life. And most of all, gaining a family and friends to help you along the way. No man is an island. These boys become the family they never had. Love affairs come and go, but friendship is forever. Or so a bunch of underage drunk kids told me. A couple of OVAs would have done wonders, though you could just read it instead, I guess. Perhaps Watanabe has like a quota of happy endings he can do in a row. You gotta leave them begging for more. Kids on the Slope gives you something you won't find in anime often. I will be honest, upon rewatching it, it doesn't hold as strong in my mind as the prior projects. But that's a high ceiling. Yet, if it introduces a younger generation to classic jazz musicians and the appeal of the genre, that's enough. Hell, the scene with the school contest, where they play a mixture of jazzy show tunes next to Bill Evans and Art Blakey, that's reason enough for anime's existence in general. Thank you to the patrons, including Now, the next video will be out in about 2 weeks' time, and that will be the final in the series, all focusing on the later years of Watanabe. So have a good day, have a nice time, and good luck with whatever you're doing today.